Good morning and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Thursday. I hope it finds you well out there. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. A couple of quick announcements. We have a mini meeting in Chandler at the Chandler Library this Monday. I think there's only one seat, maybe one or two spots still left. We will start having meetings in Deer Valley here at the Patriot office. We'll start announcing those meetings next week. And remember, the mini meetings, these are for minors. Bring your stuff. Bring your coins. Bring your phones, bring your laptops. Make sure we want everybody, if all possible, to already be on the exchange, i.e. Coinbase, Kraken, whatever exchange you want to be on. If you want to sign up for Biconomy, that's a U.S.-friendly exchange, great before the meeting. But that is what the meeting is. These mini meetings are for just that. Being able to get out on the exchanges, buy and sell your Texas coin, put it into your, turn it into money. Prove to yourselves, don't take my word on it. Prove to yourself that it is real. So you do need to RSVP for that meeting in Chandler. There's only a couple of spots left. That is Monday. And then next week, we'll start announcing more meetings here in Arizona. I know Colorado had a meeting yesterday. One quick change for Texas. We're all good. Everything's back to, I'll say, normal. The one thing, though, for those of you paying via a check, and it just sucks, but the post office is terrible. I mean, it really, nobody has any idea how long stuff's going to take. I mean, we had people that mailed out checks, and it took 10 to 12 days. What was it, 2 weeks ago? We went 5 days with no mail. We get mail every day. So for those of you paying by check, we'll put everything in once we have the check. It's just something where it allows us to pay Texas faster, which is what they've asked us to do. They want us to pay faster. So that's what we've agreed to do. But other than that, everything's back to normal. $9.95. However you want to use your gold and silver to buy Texas, you can. You want to use Texas to buy gold and silver, you can. But, man, do we have a lot of things happening very quickly over the last 24 hours. The biggest, boy, that's tough. Let's go with the repo markets. So understand what these repo markets do. So first you have the repo market, and then you have the reverse repo market. Let's just go over what those are. And by the way, this is essentially liquidity, bank liquidity. That's what we're talking about. Reverse repo simply means banks have way too much liquidity. In other words, we've got more money than we know what to do with, right? Hey, that's probably a good thing, right? Well, the banks right before COVID didn't have any money in the reverse repos, and they were now using the repo facility, which the repo facility means the bank is like, no other bank will take my debt, right? And it doesn't matter, treasury debt, commercial debt, auto loan debt, whatever debt it is, they won't take it and give me any money, give me liquidity. Obviously, why won't they take it? Because that bank is like, well, God, I need the liquidity, right? I don't have any extra liquidity. So they have the repo facility. I told you earlier this week, At the end of the month, the repo facility set a record. And at the end of the month, it's when liquidity becomes the biggest issue. Mostly because, right, what happens on the first of the month? Everyone's got to pay their mortgage and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Well, it did come down this week, but not like it should have. In other words, the repo facility is extremely elevated, which means there's liquidity problems in the system. And we're specifically talking about banks. Right now, Wall Street starting to worry a little bit about this. This is why quantitative easing is going to come to an end. And most people think Jay Powell was an idiot and just should have ended it last week instead of waiting for December 1st. But again, he did that because I think he wanted to show, hey, don't worry, we're not worried yet. Well, maybe it might be time to be worried. On top of that, because the government shut down, we don't have any government data. We've got another source for job growth. And Challenger Gray in Christmas said something happened with layoff announcements in October that hasn't happened in more than 2 decades. I'll tell you what that is when we get back. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Let's take a quick look at the market right now. The Dow's down 400 points. The S&P's down 60. The Nasdaq's down 350. The 10-year note. Now, remember, the 10-year note spiked up yesterday. Remember, got almost a 415 because the Treasury said, uh-oh. Right? Uh-oh. Hey, yeah, we're going to have to start borrowing more money because the debt just seemingly keeps getting bigger. Today, because of several different factors, the one being the liquidity issue in the reverse repo facility, another one being that according to some, I guess, what's the term I'd want to use? Private companies trying to fill in for the federal government. They're saying that, hey, it looks like if we had gotten a government jobs number tomorrow, that number was going to be a negative 9,000. Now, I don't know, but that's what they say the print was going to be, negative 9,000 jobs created, which obviously not good. That'd be the worst number of the year. One of the things that gave that credence was Challenger Gray in Christmas. Right now, what do? They track, one of the things they do, they track layoff announcements. So every state has rules. If you are laying off more than X amount of people in a particular state, you have to give them notice. In other words, you can't go in your office and fire 500, 1,000, 5,000 people. You have to tell us ahead of time. Usually these, and each state's a little different, but usually they want 90-day lead time, right? Hey, you got to let us know ahead of time. Well, Challenger Gray and Christmas tracks that. What did they say for the month of October? 153,074 jobs, up 183% from September, 175% higher than the same month a year ago. And by the way, it was the highest level for a month of August going all the way back to 2003. So, Jason, today we've got the 10-year note down to 408, 409, because the data from today says, the job market finally is starting to soften and soften more than people are thinking.
Yeah, it almost makes you feel like they shut the government down to cap the bad information. I wouldn't think they'd go that far on this because the bad information can be good information depending on how you're investing, right? But it's interesting, isn't it? The timing is definitely interesting, and maybe the government. I've said that it seems to me like this government shutdown is going to last a while. I couldn't give a reason exactly why. It just seems like it has this, test the waters on everything. How long can people go without food stamps? How long can how long can the government keep a clear head? Now it makes me wonder if, there's a timing to this too. It's like when we come out of this government shutdown, we want the government numbers to be so horrible, right? That we had to full bore ahead, drop the rates, print the money, because isn't that what they've been? They're starting to chirp a little bit. Oh, quantitative easing. There's a little bit of talking about that, right, Joe? And no one's going to go for that unless you have something really bad to show them, right? Something bad. So maybe the government shutdown can kind of hide things for a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll see how this has the effect. So again. Now, that's three bad things, right? We had, right, the reverse repo facility, which means banks have lots of liquidity, empty, right? Empty. The repo facility, which means if banks are using the repo facility, it means they need liquidity, and none of the other banks would take their debt to give it to them. Now, is it because other banks are saying, you're in trouble? Yeah, I'm not loaning you money. You're that's too risky. Sooner or later we'll get burnt because something about your balance sheet isn't right? Or is this more of, hey, nobody has liquidity. Yeah, you're maybe not that. My guess is it's both. I bet there's some banks that other banks are like, hey, nah, right? You got trouble coming. And then others, it's just a matter of there is none, right? We would give it to you, but there's none to give. Then we got the bad jobs data, the layoff announcements. But you know what? It may be this one that really is scaring the market today. Jensen Huang. Who is he? Well, Jensen, he's a pretty important guy because he's the head of NVIDIA. The big Mag 7 winner NVIDIA. The head, right? When you talk about data centers and AI, it's NVIDIA. In an interview with the Financial Times, he said, and I quote, China is going to win the AI race. China is going to win the AI race. Saying that it's very simple. They have lower energy cost, looser regulations, and aggressive state subsidies for data centers and key advantages over the United States. And he went on to say, so we kind of have this illusion that we're way ahead of China when it comes to these chips, right? China, they can make the less techie chips. That's what we're led to believe. And, of course, NVIDIA right now can't sell its Blackwell, its best chips to China. Well, listen to what Jensen says. As I have long said, and by the way, I know it because he's been saying it for all year. Every time anyone asks him the right questions. China is a nanosecond behind America in AI. It's vital that America wins by racing ahead. Unfortunately, he said, China's going to win. Why? Well, they got cheaper costs, easier regulations, they've got better subsidies, and Jason, I think this has gotten everybody worried now because, let's face it, the big win in this market has been AI and data centers, and NVIDIA being the biggest part of that, and their CEO saying, hey, China's right behind us, and by the way, guys, yeah, it's kind of set up for them to win.
Right. What was that story about? I think it was last year, maybe early this year. Was it AI? It was an AI company. Something popped open. It was a China company, and they were able to do what the American AI companies couldn't do. It was like a superior. It was like super cheap, super fast, way better. Yep. Remember that?
Yeah. Yes, when they were stacking that stuff, and the Chinese came out and said, hey, look at what we've got. We've got the cheaper chips, and we're 10 times faster. Our AI is better than your AI, and we did it for a fraction of the price.
I mean, I remember that news hit, and then as soon as the news hit, we didn't hear a peep about it after that. American media stepped all over that, didn't they? What's going on over there in China? Remember, it's the Chinese people that are standing in line for 8 hours to get gold. The Americans aren't doing that. So what's really going on in China? I mean, we can hate them all we want as being our economic enemy, but they're in a strong position. They're in a strong position, right?
Gold's flat to up right now. By the way, Dow's on now 500 points. Another good showing for gold here. $39.80. Silver, $48. $20 gold last day here. $41.25. I actually moved the price up to $41.50. If gold, I have a feeling gold may jump at the close here. Just what I think is I think we're getting very close, and I said this the other day. There's another rate cut coming in December. I think it's already out here because of the liquidity markets. Do not be surprised. I will say this: quantitative easing will be back in 2026. There's just not enough. And this is why when you start thinking about why is it, like Jason made a great point. He's like, listen, people are lining up in South Korea, in Japan, in China, in England, in Europe. People aren't lining up here yet. And I say yet. But already, look at the squeeze. Very little product to be had. And especially with silver. China announced yesterday, oh boy, I don't know if this is going to be another issue. They announced new export controls on antimony, tungsten, and silver. You heard it right. According to the Global Times, the document was proposed by the Department of Foreign Trade, essentially saying to protect resources and the environment and enhance export management of raw materials. That the Chinese are now going to either limit and exports of those three metals. Obviously, silver, one of the bigger ones. But when we look at tungsten, China totals 12,000 tons from January to December. By the way, that they're already been decreasing that. This is used for manufacturing of light filaments, optical instruments. China produces more than 80% of all the global tungsten in the world. So, Jason, I haven't seen any response from the Trump administration yet, but it appears export controls. Now, I guess these aren't technically rare earths, but obviously
important.
Some really, really important metals that China's like, yeah, we got to keep them at home. Thanks, guys. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. Stocks selling off here today. Jensen, the head of NVIDIA, letting it be known there's a nanoseconds difference from where we are and where the Chinese are in AI. And China's going to win. On top of that, this news about the repo facilities, it's a big deal. Okay, so the one facility that we would like the banks to use is the reverse repo facility. Why am I saying we would like that? Because that means they have extra. There's no money in it, right? It's empty. The repo facility, well, that's the one we don't want them to use. Why? Because that means banks won't lend to other banks. You only do that for one or two reasons. The worst reason is, we don't want to lend it to you because we think you're going under. Right? Your balance sheet sucks. Blah, 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 blah. I hope, now listen, some of this reverse repo stuff is that. That of course. But we are talking about amounts now that it better not all be that, or we got big trouble. I'm hoping that a lot of this borrowing is going on is because none of the banks have extra, which still isn't good, right? But you get my point, right? It's not just because, hey, we have the liquidity, we just don't want to give it to you because we think you're not solvent. On top of that, the debasement trade continues to gain speed. China had that big announcement, what was it? I think last month, maybe it was a month ago, maybe it was 2 months ago, that they were now prepared to start storing countries' gold at their central bank gold storage facility. Now, it's great to announce that, right? And obviously the Shanghai Exchange really has elevated its presence in all of the commodities markets, but especially in the precious metals markets. Today, Cambodia announced that it will be among the first nations to place part of its official gold holdings in Chinese custody. Cambodia went on to say that this will be new gold that they are purchasing, and it will not be part of the existing gold that they already have. So kind of a double whammy. South Korea, right, they're our friends, have said they're interested in it. And guys, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to see a ton of these countries put their gold in China, store their gold in China. What does that mean? Why is that important? We talk about, remember how gold is priced. London sets the spot price. When you look at your TV, you notice how most of the time the spot price is different from what you see on CNBC or Fox. And that is because they're taking the New York contract price. And right now, the contract that is trading in New York is December's contract. And those prices are different. China essentially wants to take over and be the place where all the spot markets get determined. Why? Well, let's see. No one consumes more materials. They're the largest producer of gold. No one mines more gold. No one consumes more gold than them in India, right? Silver, you go through, you name it. Copper, iron ore, right? Cement, it doesn't matter. Oil, China consumes more. And now the rest of the world is starting to say, you know what? Yeah, I'd rather have you guys holding my gold than London or Zurich, right? With Switzerland, that's another place where a lot of people store their gold. Beijing is setting up to build the financial architect to be less dependent on the dollar and Western institutions. And you start looking at the Asian countries. India, they've got 880 tons. Japan's got 840 tons. Australia's got 80 tons. Cambodia, they've got 54 metric tons and says, hey, by the way, we're going to start buying more. Indonesia's buying more. Singapore's buying more. South Korea's buying more. Thailand's buying more. Vietnam, they're all buying more. And they're all saying, hey, Jason, they're all saying, you know what, I think it's a good idea. Let's store it in China instead.
Well, yeah, you have that BRICS thing going on, right? So there's a lot of countries signed on to that idea of a new.
I didn't even talk about the BRICS countries doing it, right? These are just like neighbors.
Right, but there's a lot of neighbors that are either signed on to BRICS or wanting to be a part of BRICS or, applied to be a part of BRICS. I didn't hear that Great Britain or France was going to store their gold in China, right? So I didn't hear any Western countries putting their stuff there.
South Korea, Japan, right?
Right.
I know South Korea has expressed interest. Japan's new for me. India, obviously, of course, right? It's interesting. It's a lot of gold. That's a lot of gold not to be in London.
Correct. So let's just see. We'll see if it keeps on going that direction. If China keeps getting possession of and buying of these large amounts of gold, and economies start to show weakness, it's the gold market. The paper gold market in America may lose its grip, right, Joe? We might actually see the gold price be where it's supposed to be. And what is that real number, anyways, Joe? Right? What is that real number?
Well, you know what? I'll be honest. I don't want to know. I don't. That will be terrible. I know it's hard to sit there and look at it, but gold's like $4,000. And I'm like, well, good, it's only $4,000. At least it's not terrible yet. Right? The ability for gold to be 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, right? That's what keeps me up at night. Patriot Radio News Hour will be back after the break. 800-951-0596. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason. $20 gold pieces today. 21 and a quarter. 41 and a quarter. $4,125 at 800-951-0592. So a pretty tough day today. Obviously, the government shutdown continues to roll. News from NVIDIA, news from Target, news from Chipotle, all of it not good. Challenger Grain and Christmas, not good. CarMax, it cratered today as the board ousted its CEO, saying massive miss in expectations. They were expecting 69 cents. Could be as low as 18 cents. Ouch. Unit sales down 10%. So more signs, this used car market, the car market in general. I know this. Repos are skyrocketing, and Jason, it just seems like no one can afford to buy anything. The average home buyer, new record today, 40 years old is the average age of a first-time home buyer, the highest ever for the United States. And it just looks like people aren't buying houses, people aren't buying cars, even with rates. Let's face it, they're well off their highs. I mean, gosh, we were talking about 10-year note, at least a 30-year note hitting 5%, 3-4 months ago. We got a 10-year note, it's a little over 4, but around 4%. And it's provided, doesn't look like it's provided any relief, Jason.
It's just sounds bad. It sounds bad, Joey. Was it yesterday, day before, you were talking about some of the restaurants around the area where you went were all just shuttered up. And we had some people, text in. They're like, well, it's this and that and everything else. But there's a lot of shuttering going on. There's a lot of these shops that are shutting their doors, Joe. It's hard when you're looking at today. When you're a responsible adult, you're always saying, okay, this is the situation, and how do I get better, right? How do I fix this, or how do I get better? And when you get into that mindset, you stop remembering, what it was like 20 years ago. Remember what the towns look like, Joe? How small businesses just ruled the landscape, and the big corporate franchises had to sort of earn their position slowly over time. Now it's the complete trust of the consumer is in these huge monolithic companies, and they're just squashing the smaller businesses. Now what we got is we have monolithic franchises smashing the smaller franchises because there's hardly any mom and pop stores. I mean, there's still small business out there, but Joe, I mean, I rarely hear of a small business that just walks around strutting around. Man, I am kicking some butt. I'm rolling in it, right? When was the last time you heard a local business walking around like that?
Yeah, it's and even listen, the bigger chains that aren't well run, even they are starting to fall, right? Those are the things I think that have me worried. You think of things like a Red Robin or like Red Lobster and places like this that they're just not able to absorb what's happening, whether it be higher prices, whether it be higher cost, right, for employees, insurance, whatever it may, on top of the higher cost for food. And they don't have the ability, as the second the consumer just pulls back a little bit, right? Oh, I got businesses down 5 or 10%. For a lot of these companies, that puts them on the edge to be in bankruptcy, and I think this is what the worries are. We already have seen bankruptcies. Listen, bankruptcies have been rising for the last 2-3 years pretty consistently, but it's at this point now. The banks have no more liquidity. It appears that possibly fine, blame the government shutdown. Well, the government shutdown has made it another leg worse for a lot of these companies, Jason. That's it, right? That's the last. There are no more legs after that.
Yeah. It's like that old animated movie, WALL-E. Remember the little robot that's cleaning up the planet by himself? And the entire
that movie.
The entire planet was by and large. Remember, the whole entire planet was by and large. There was no other companies. Kind of like Demolition Man, when the fast food restaurant wars, and it was won by Taco Bell. Right? So if you wanted a steak, you went to Taco Bell. If you wanted a taco or a pizza, you had to go to Taco Bell, right? And that kind of gets that feel, doesn't it, Joe? It just has that feel that we're what was that Robin Williams movie in the 80s where he's a part of the circus. He's from Russia, and he defected. Remember, he defected to America. And while he's in America, he's left. He's no longer with his Russian friends and circus mates. He's adapting to life in America, and they send him to go get coffee at the grocery store. He walks into the grocery store, and he sees coffee. He's sees 500 versions of coffee to buy, and he falls over and passes out because he doesn't know what to do. Because in Russia, there was only one can of coffee. That's all you bought, right?
Right.
But it feels like that's what we're heading towards, that, doesn't it? A little bit more of a...
Well, the funny thing is, there's going to be a lot of quote-unquote different packaging for coffee, but it all may be owned by the same company, right? That's kind of what we have going on here in America. Final segment coming up. 800-951-0592. Patriot Radio News Hour. $20 gold pieces, 41 1/4. $10 gold pieces, 21.65. $5 gold pieces, 1,085 at 800-951-0592. If you're just joining us, some discouraging words out of the CEO of NVIDIA saying that China is going to win the AI race, that they're only nanoseconds behind. And by the way, everything's cheaper there. I mean, that's kind of what he said. Everything's cheaper there, from energy to materials to regulations, and that upset the markets. Then we've got bad jobs information from Challenger Gray in Christmas, record layoffs announcements for the month of October. On top of that, because we won't be getting the government jobs number, some companies went and figured it all out, right? Shocking, and said, boy, if we did have a government jobs number tomorrow, it would have been negative jobs created for the month of October. That has gotten Wall Street, well, let's just say worried, right? Obviously, price to perfection. If you want to talk about, well, what's some good news? All of that bad information, at least the 10-year note's back below 410, right? It's, 409. Because yesterday the Treasury said we need to borrow more money, and then today we find out the reverse repo facility, which is a good facility, is empty. The repo facility, heavy borrowing, which means banks aren't loaning to other banks. In other words, they're not taking other banks' debt as collateral, either because they don't like that bank's balance sheet and or, hey, we don't have any liquidity to give you even if we wanted to.
So the 10-year note's down, though. I mean, so how does that fit? I mean, how is this going to – it doesn't look like it's going to keep going. Is this considered good, Joe? Is this
no. Well, you know what? There's good downs and there's bad downs. This would be considered a bad down. They're saying two things. One, there's stress in the market, which means they're expecting the central bank to step in to markets at some point. And again, they kind of quasi already hinted that quantitative easing may make another appearance. But I think really today's down is all of a sudden the rate cut that Jay Powell put into doubt at the last Fed meeting almost now looks like a sure thing, right? Hey, we're going to cut rates. It has nothing to do with inflation. It has nothing, you know what, quite honestly, it doesn't have to do anything to do with what Jensen said. It doesn't have anything to do with people sending their gold to China. It doesn't have anything to do with Challenger Gray and Christmas. Jason, this is just something where they're trying to create more liquidity in the system because there's not enough.
We're going to come out of a government shutdown and have quantitative easing maybe, huh?
Listen, I think we're going to have a spending bazooka when it finally does end. And I think you're going to see, here you go, the gold and silver, the stampede will start up again.